and welcome to Just Onside. It appears we're on the cusp of World War III. It is getting a little bit spicy. It's probably very spicy where you are. I mean, I sort of exchanged some texts yesterday with you, OS, and it sounded quite worrying. How are you, my friend? Normally, I just want to ask you, it's quite a general sort of genteel sort of pleasantry, but I think at the moment with what's going on, I'm really concerned. So, what is happening?
Yeah, when you normally ask me, what you're trying to say is that you don't really care for my response, but in not so many words. No, it's fine. No issues. It's a bit disconcerting, no doubt. There's a lot of things happening overhead here in Abu Dhabi as well. We've seen quite a few things as well. You get emergency alerts on your phone to stay vigilant. Sent from the central authority. So that's happening sporadically, let's say every few hours. We've seen a lot of interceptions in the skies as well, Ayub, just over the buildings and what have you. So again, disconcerting is probably the right word. But yeah, we've seen some more, let's say, difficult scenes in Dubai as well. I'm sure you've stayed on top of it, Ayub, especially around the Palm. The main issue is around the debris, the falling debris that's causing a lot of issues. You've seen the Burj Al Arab ablaze as well. So yeah, definitely a challenging time. School's been moved to online for the next few days for my young girl, and I think around the city and what have you. So yeah, you hear a lot of bangs, a lot of explosions because of those interceptions that I spoke about, Ayub. So yeah, it's never nice, is it? But hopefully this will pass in the coming weeks. One would hope. But on the whole, everybody's fine, staying vigilant, but also staying indoors for the most part.
Well, good to know that all is well, certainly at your end. But I've got a feeling, scary feeling, that it will escalate before obviously it sort of de-escalates. But let's hope that sanity prevails. It's highly unlikely, but it's probably a good time to talk about football, a distraction. So there was a big game for us yesterday. I'm going to ask you first because obviously you watched the whole game. I was in the mosque, as you know, I'm a religious type, so I was in the mosque praying for a
Yeah.
Leeds draw at least, which never sort of materialised. But sort of you give me your takes on the game. I mean, certainly from my point of view. I mean, I think we sort of gave a good account of ourselves, but obviously I'll offer my thoughts after. But what were your thoughts on the game? Obviously, for you, there's a vested interest. You obviously wanted us to do you a favour, which before the game probably seemed highly unlikely. During the game, it might have seemed a possibility. So go and take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you were at the mosque, I would imagine, repenting for your sins. I'm surprised you're not still there, to be fair, but but that's by the by.
they,
Um,
they kicked me out.
uh, I'm sure they did. But no, look, I did watch the game. I mean, it was what 9:30 our time, Ayub, so after the evening prayer and what have you, which we did venture out for. But the evening prayer, and it was a good game, to be honest, to watch and what have you. I thought City in the end were worthy of the victory. They were a class apart, I think, for the most part. But Leeds did what most teams should do in their position, which is take it into the dying embers and then see if you can get a little bit of luck. I think that's normally you're not going to play City off the park, are you? Not this particular City, who have now started to find their offensive groove. Are you in the second half of the season? I think you'd agree. They've become more solid at the back. Gay's signing has been incredibly impactful, and then you've got arguably the player of the season in Semenyo up front, or playing up front yesterday, I guess, with Haaland's absence, making a huge impact in the final third as well. So I think Leeds did what they could for the most part. The challenge always is, in games like these, that you're probably going to have one or two opportunities that you probably need to take. And that's what it came down to. You look at the chance that DCL had in the first 5 minutes. So I think it was around the fourth minute. It's a chance that he should put away. Any decent striker should put away. Initially, I thought he might be offside, actually, with the ball coming off, just from looking at the angle. But then obviously I saw the replay, and he was clearly onside. Lovely ball. About as good a ball as you could play in those circumstances. Lovely on the bounce. You think just cushion it past Donnarumma. I think the DCL for me, I classify him, I don't know if you agree, as a volume striker. He's not the most clinical. He's not the most confident. He's not the most cold. as you want in front of the goal. But he's a volume striker. Give him enough opportunities. And to his credit, he's getting in enough situations as well to get on the end of those kind of, let's say, third or fourth chances. But he's not, I don't think he's clinical by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. But that was a great chance. I think there, if you just get it on target, you're probably going to score, given the distance to the goal. But maybe Donnarumma also has an impact on your thinking, right? That you probably need to get it into the corner. So give the goalkeeper some credit. But that was, and I think the commentator said it, at least our commentators here in the Middle East said it, that that's maybe the best chance they're going to get. And it proved to be the case. I think the Aronson chance of you, I think he would have been just flagged offside looking at the replay at least the one time when he went through one-on-one. But beating Donnarumma one-on-one is about as tough a task as you're going to get in this league. But Leeds huffed and puffed. Look, I think Leeds do deserve credit. I've watched them now, where you're probably in a sense more than you have, given that you're pensioned for not trying to watch games because you're quite nervous, which is fair enough. But I see a competitive team, but a team that just lacks a little bit of quality in the final third. And I think you have to give them credit. They've gone on the days where Leeds are getting just sliced open, games done and dusted at half time. I mean, they're a different team now. Yes, occasionally. I know they've got pasted by Arsenal a couple of times, but for the most part this season, they've stayed in games. They've been competitive. They've not looked naive. They've not looked a class apart. Yes, talent in the final third is always going to be the differentiator when you compare, let's say, the three tiers to the league. You know, kind of those top echelon clubs, those middle, and then those battling relegation. And I think there should be enough in that team, in my opinion, that should give the ownership confidence just very quickly that actually we can establish ourselves here. We're a good team that's just missing a sprinkling of talent. Interesting to see one of your ex-players continue his form at West Ham. He'd be wonderful, I think, in this team right now with the form that he's showing in Summerville. But going back to this game, I thought City are you, but worthy winners in the end. They controlled the game well in the second half and then defended a lot of the set pieces that came in, the long throws from Ampadu. I thought they defended those very well. I thought Rodri had a wonderful game, controlling the situation in the middle of the park, offering angles, playing it swiftly, playing it smoothly, playing it quickly. City, they weren't as clinical as they can be. There were a lot of, I'd say, half chances that they probably should have done a little bit better with. But on the whole, I always felt they had control and they kept Leeds at arm's length. And again, I think they were worthy winners. Good performance, like I said. I thought Rodri was a class apart. They look more solid at the back now with Diaz. And if you look at that spine now, with Haaland's return, you would imagine coming. Donnarumma, Diaz, Gehi, Rodri, and Haaland up front, and a sprinkling of arguably player of the season in Semenyo and others. They're a really good outfit now. They're a very different outfit to how they started the season. Obviously, they had a lot of injuries, and City, give them credit, they decided to back the manager in January, knowing that this title was there to be won, and not just this title. You would feel like this team can now go far in the Champions League. Tough draw that they've got in Real in the last 16, and most likely Bayern in the quarters. But even so, they just look a very different outfit to the first half of the season. So they look in control. I think they'll fancy chasing Arsenal down. But on the whole, on the game itself, I thought they were worthy winners. From your perspective, Ayub, I guess on one hand, you've got to be pleased because they put a good account for themselves. You're not going to beat City, are you? On the whole, if you play the game 10 times out of 10, you might pick up a draw maybe here and there. But on the whole, what's your feelings towards Leeds itself, and where do you think this leaves City in the title race?
I think you summarised it well. I think. I mean, I'd probably say we might have just done enough for a draw. But you alluded to DCL's miss, and I think that was crucial. I mean, again, it was early on in the game, so City would have had plenty of time to come back from that. But it's the failings of DCL. I mean, you talked about him as a striker and his attributes, but he's the reason why he won't go to the World Cup is for that reason. Obviously, I mean, it seems quite simplistic to say that, but he isn't clinical. And the problem is when you're a team that's towards the bottom, the one thing that you can't have is somebody who's going to miss you're not going to get that many opportunities. So you have to have, your ratio has to be high. And this is where I think there's a failing of Leeds United Football Club. I think when you're going to be around at the bottom, I think the industry, the work rate, the commitment, the attitude is first class. I think Mark has done a fantastic job on that. I think we've got a great deal of sort of workman-like players. but we are missing that stardust, and this is why it's so important. I think Rafinha is a template. I think if you're at the bottom, you need at least one. If you, I mean, if you've got two, that's a real blessing. But those are the people, sort of players that'll transform maybe a 0-0 into a 1-0, maybe a 1-0 defeat into a 1-1 draw.
Yeah.
And it's what we're missing because we've dropped so many points, and there's been opportunities before in tight games. Because apart from Arsenal, I mean, I'm really trying to sort of think if anybody else has absolutely sort of battered it. I don't think we've won.
Yeah.
We've lost games by large margins, apart from Arsenal. I mean, you think about City. I mean, they are the Premier League champions. We got beat 3-2, and that was sort of at the dying embers and 1-0. So, and against all the other bigger teams, we've done really, really well. But it's just that sort of that sort of sprinkling of stardust that we're missing, and that again was so evident yesterday. But also, I'd like to talk about some of the officiating. I mean, I've watched the highlights. I've not watched the whole game, but obviously you've watched the whole game. And at the end, Falk got sent off, and there was a reason why he was so sort of worked up. There was an incident with I think Chekri sort of Turkey. There was a challenge,
Yeah.
which I don't even think sort of got a card. There was a handball incident towards the end, which VAR sort of said that his arm was in a natural position. So, I mean, obviously you watched the game. I presume there was lots of talking. I mean, there was lots of sort of comments, I presume, at the time on those incidents. So, what was your take on that? I mean, did you think it was a penalty? Did you think the challenge deserved a red card?
To be honest, when Donnarumma caught the ball, I think 96th minute, because I think there was 6 minutes of added time. To be honest, I switched off the TV and went to my bedroom. But I found out afterwards that Daniel Farke had been sent off. But thanks for highlighting the incidents that you've mentioned. The Shirky one, I think you're talking about the one that was on the byline when the ball was kind of stuck. I think it was, I want to say it was Stack, but I'll have to check which player it was. But the ball was stuck between Leeds United player's legs, and Shirky kind of was trying to dig the ball out, and then he put his leg in a slightly unnatural position back towards the player's calf or shin or what have you. I think that's the incident you're referring to, because it was definitely on the manager's touchline, let's say, right in front of the managers. It's a tricky one because I don't think the referee's going to see enough to be able to give that. And once he's given it, the VAR can't intervene for a yellow card. That's the challenge. I don't think it was a red card personally. That's just my opinion. Only because I think when it's a tangle of legs, I think it can sometimes look more deliberate than it is, if that makes sense. I think there wasn't enough real estate for him to plant his foot down safely, and it ended up being on the Liverpool Leeds player's calf. Again, only Shirky can confirm if he meant it or not. It's one of those where it's a very difficult one to interpret. I think the handball that you're referring to, Ayub, if I'm not mistaken, is when the cross was coming in.
Yeah.
And Diaz had his hand. I think it was Diaz had his hand in a heightened position. Now, I didn't think about it until you mentioned it. Obviously, I thought about it when it was live because I saw his hand flailing. What was unclear was whether he touched it, because that to me looked a bit unclear, at least on the first replay. They only showed us one replay over here. If he touches it, it's a handball and it's a penalty, because it's not one of those where his hand's in a natural position. It's an unnatural position for me. But again, I think similar to, and I think City may have had this incident about 5 or 6 games ago as well, or maybe it was a Liverpool game, where it's just so unclear whether or not the players touched it. And I didn't see enough replays to suggest whether he did or he didn't. Again, if it's proven he touched it, it's a penalty. I mean,
He touched
he's
it.
not.
And I think the VAR decision was that his hand was in a natural position. I mean,
Yeah, I
that was
can't
the
agree. Yeah, I
yeah.
can't
I mean
agree with that, because his hand was above his head, wasn't it? And I think the cross comes from, if we're talking about the same incident, the cross I think comes from Ampadu on the right hand side, or somebody crosses it in from a distance. And that's the one. Is that the same incident you're referring to, where his hand was above his shoulder? How can that be in a natural position? I don't.
Yeah.
I not for the life of me. If it was proven, the tricky thing was, and I'll let you go on this. The tricky thing for me was, because the ball's being crossed from the right hand side, the ball's naturally curling outwards, if that makes sense. So as his arm's gone up with the curl, it was just difficult, and we only got one replay. That's the point. It wasn't the best replay, so I just couldn't tell. Now, if you're saying to me that no, it was proven that he touched it, it's a stone wall. I don't think even City fans would disagree, because you can never have your hand above your arm, especially when the balls come from a decent distance, which it did. It's not like as though, I mean, even if it was shot at him at close at point blank range, and he had his hand above his head, it'd have most likely still been given as a penalty because they would have said, irrespective of the distance, your hand's in an unnatural position. The fact that he's come from a mile away, if it's proven he touched it, for me, if that was me and an Arsenal fan, genuinely, I wouldn't even be arguing. I'd be like, that's Stonewall, just from the
Yeah.
distance, because you've got to
I
be
mean,
able to
I'll
judge.
sort of watch it again. I mean, I mean, fleetingly, I sort of watched it because obviously I've just watched. I mean, the highlights on YouTube is about 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. So I'll have to sort of just make sure it's the same incident because I mean, certainly online, the fans were going absolutely nuts. And also, I think the reason why I thought was what sort of
Mm,
what was the final straw was that I think it was 6 minutes added, but there was lots of time wasting from Man City players, and there was I think some sort of cards. I think there was a substitution as well. So
mhm.
normally it's always extended. He just as soon as it was 6 minutes, bang, he just blew his whistle. So I think that sort of it sort of raised the fury in Fark, and he did sort of get sent off, which is a bit of a shame because he won't be in the dugout for a crucial game that we play on Tuesday against Sunderland. Now, uh, that's sort of it, I mean, this was it. I won't say it's a free hit. I've never been keen on
Yeah,
this like sort of free hit. But obviously the fact that West Ham lost, Burnley, I'm not so worried about. Even though I mean it was a cracking game for Burnley. I mean, I think they'll be absolutely distraught. Two disallowed goals. But West Ham and Nottingham Forest. I mean, Spurs, I just think are safe. I mean, it's a strange one to think because obviously they're still below us, but I still think they're safe. But Forest and West Ham perhaps. Are the ones that I'm keeping an eye on. So West Ham
yeah,
losing against Liverpool, obviously, it just made
yeah.
it easier, more palatable. But we've obviously got a massive, massive game against a team that's come up with us last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of with you on Spurs because if you look at the points situation, they feel like 2 wins away from being safe, if that makes sense. I mean, I look at the table, I look at their goal difference. I just think they're going to get a couple of wins, aren't they? Surely.
Mm,
I mean, they play Fulham away, I think, today,
yeah.
I believe. So a good chance for them to kind of arrest any panic that might be setting in. But I do feel I'm with you. I think it's with Spurs, it's a bit of a TBC. It's like okay, they're not in it, but if this continued for another, let's say 2, maybe 3 weeks, and the others picked up points,
Mm.
then perhaps you'd have to kind of reevaluate the situation. I just want to ask you something. I mentioned him earlier, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. When Summerville was playing for Leeds, I watched him the whole game yesterday, pretty much apart from half an hour missed for evening prayer. He's a player that I've watched now very closely in a lot of the games because they've been featuring quite heavily. They had the Stamford Bridge game the other day live on TV, but I've watched a number of West Ham games recently, and he just looks an incredibly, incredibly confident player right now. And I just want to ask you, like when he was playing for Leeds, I mean, I remember watching him. You watched him much closer than I did. Did you see this player at that time for Leeds? Did you see the potential? I mean, he always looked a bit of a tricky winger, but he looks like he may have earned himself a move to one of the big boys because I'm seeing a completely different player. He's not, I mean, Bowen's not even West Ham's best player right now. It's this lad over here.
Mm.
So when you watched him for Leeds, did you see this in it in terms
Oh,
of the
I
potential?
absolutely. I mean, I think in our sort of promotion season, he was our player of the season by a country mile, absolute country mile. Because what he is a winger, but he's a winger who scores a lot of goals. It was a strange because I mean we got him sort of when he was quite young, and it took a little bit of time before he sort of broke in. But I mean, in junior sort of football, on sort of under 18s, he was always scoring a hatful of goals, and he was always a winger as well.
Mm,
But we always knew. I mean, in that sort of season under Bielsa, he was absolutely outstanding. He's on fire, and even the season in the Premier League. I mean, remember the famous goal against Liverpool, the late winner against Liverpool. It's he's a player that I knew. I mean, in fact, what was surprising was when he went to West Ham. It was quite a slow start for Summerville. So that was the surprise, not this. This is actually what I expected. I think he's an outstanding player. He's got a right level of arrogance as well. Certainly when he was at Leeds, obviously, because he was a big fish. So maybe that sort of changed to a club where obviously there's other big name players as well. But I think he's an outstanding talent, and I think he would brace any of the better sides because I think he's got all the attributes. And as I said, it's a winger to score sort of goals. It's I mean wingers are perhaps you've got to chip in, but he scored I think nearly 20 goals, uh, and he was playing as a winger. So it sort of shows that he's obviously got an eye for goal.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're watching players, you have to quickly evaluate, especially when they're going through a hot streak. Is this streaky or is this sustainable? That's what I'm always looking at. And I look at his attributes right now, and I'm looking at a player who has finally unlocked, in a sense, what that potential looks like. So I don't think there's any going back for him. Now, what I would say is when I see him play, giving goals, dribbling past people, taking the ball up the pitch, confidence. I mean, some of the plays he's creating to try and influence the final third, to make an impact, to try and get shots away, to get crosses away. He's not playing on the periphery of things. He's impacting the biggest moments, which is what I love to see from wingers, taking ownership, that type of mentality. So I think there's no turning back for him. I think he will move to a bigger club this summer. When I watch him, he looks class apart. He looks a top player. I would be very surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a Liverpool who need wingers, Chelsea who haven't quite nailed down that side, maybe even Arsenal, because there's some rumours they're in the market, obviously for a winger, because maybe Martinelli will be sold, maybe Trossard, who knows. So very interesting to see, because I think he'll be playing for a top six club. If not, then moving out to Europe. He's too good for West Ham, with the greatest of respect. What I would say. Just moving on, Ayub, from a Leeds perspective, how do you see it now for the relegation battle? Again, summarising them yesterday, plenty of endeavour. Goodmanson will run for days. Justin Bogle. You just wonder whether, again, just that kind of sprinkling of stardust that you're asking for. It's a loss, but are you still encouraged in this race now going into the final 9 or 10 games that you'll still have enough to stave off that final third spot for relegation?
My worry is, I mean, I think the attitude and the application, there's no question about that we'll give it everything that we've got. But it's
Yeah,
that quality. I think that is where my concern is that will we be able to sort of get results in games where perhaps chances are going to be at a premium? And that's my worry. As I said, uh, we're going to be competitive, but sort of this is a tough league. We're playing
mm,
Sunderland. I mean that what sort of gives me cause for optimism is that obviously the fewer games left, and as long as I mean at the moment there's a 6 point gap, and I think what is it 10 games left? I think so. And West Ham have got some tough games. Nottingham Forest have got some tough games. We've obviously got some tough games, but we've got over the next sort of 3 or 4 games, games that we should have a chance, and it's imperative. Maybe perhaps if we sort of speak in about 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be in a much better position to sort of say it. But these next 2 or 3 games will be defining, because the games that we should have a really good chance, because we're playing Brentford, we're playing Sunderland, and these are games that perhaps, I mean, it's a home games as well, so it gives us an opportunity to get sort of wins, because we've got that slight buffer at this moment as well. But as I said, it's so tight at the bottom, and you've given me a couple of reasons why I should still worry about West Ham. They've got Bowen, but they've got Summerville as well. They've got a couple of others
yeah.
who can turn games, and that's the difference. They've got sort of players that capitalize on key moments. We don't. But just before we go and let you indulge in Arsenal, I think it was probably, I don't know whether we've had other games, but it was the first game if sort of
Yeah,
if memory serves me, you know what I'm probably going to go to. It's
I
the
know.
fasting and it's the breaking of the fast. I mean, I knew if there's one set
Ellen Road.
yeah, if there's one set of fans that we're gonna sort of make a dog's dinner of this, it was going to be Leeds, especially because I knew when I looked at the lineup, we didn't have any starting players or in the starting lineup who were Muslim. So obviously that break was only going to be for Man City, and it was quite a cacophony of boos
Yeah.
around the stadium. I mean, I had to block a couple of people because I got into Twitter battles as I as I normally do, because I thought it was outrageous, but I did suspect it was going to happen. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, did you obviously you watched the game? Did you was it audible, the boos when they were breaking for the fast?
Are you getting into Twitter battles, Ayub. I mean, they do say the devil makes work for idle hands, and in Ramadan, there's firstly plenty of time, and that's when the devil's doing its damnedest, let's say, to get you to deviate away from what Ramadan focus should be, peace, tranquility, and all the rest of it. But no, look. I thought about this actually long and hard because obviously Guardiola was asked about it after the game and he gave a relatively thoughtful response, I think. But I think with this type of situation, you have to be measured in how you treat it. And you don't want to be too harsh or too tough. This is, I think, especially with what kind of started transpiring around the world in the last 24, 36 hours, I think there is a ever greater need for, let's say, understanding amongst the differences that we carry, differences in culture, differences in religion, and what have you. And if the world could do with one thing right now, it's a bit more commonality, a bit more understanding, a bit more kind of reasonable attitudes, and all the rest of it. I think if you watch the reaction of some of the Leeds players, so the way this fell about, very quickly for context, is that Manchester City put in a request to the Premier League. The Premier League covered it with Leeds United Football Club, and Leeds United said, yeah, no issues. We don't have a problem with that. So it was all agreed and all above board. It wasn't just something that City asked for and City got. Leeds United were kind of complicit, and we're happy to align. And I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's not a huge issue. The other day when Tottenham were playing Arsenal, we had a communications issue, and the game stopped at after I think about 10 minutes. It stopped for about 8-9 minutes, and then at the start of the second half, it stopped for another 4, 5, 6 minutes. So, I mean, this is a couple of minutes. That's all it was, really. And you're probably going to get that type of stoppage for an injury anyway. So, look, and I think anytime you can extend, I wouldn't call it an olive branch, but anytime you can extend a little bit of thoughtfulness towards people who might be practicing a different religion, who might, and what have you, that's not necessarily interrupting massively, let's say, the flow of the game. We're not talking like 10, 15 minutes or maybe half an hour in your case, are you for a good iftar? But we're talking about a little bit of liquids and a little bit of energy gel or whatever it might be. So I think it was minimal, next to minimal. And I think what was interesting was just very quickly, I think one of the Leeds, defenders, a couple of Leeds players asked, maybe they weren't fully in the know, maybe they were too focused on the game, but they asked, and there was this palpable sign when the referee explained that, yeah, they've got a couple of players fasting. They were like, oh yeah, cool. Like it was they brushed it off. So I think the players were very understanding. I think Goodmanson also asked the referee. I think your number two, who was asked, I think maybe in the press conference or something like that, said it's a bit disappointing if it was the case. The boos were palpable. I think Leeds tried to do the right thing actually by putting a message out onto the big screen to say that the game has been paused to allow players of the opposition, or just to allow players to break fast for Ramadan. I think that's good because you're trying to break or fill the gap of any ignorance or any kind of confusion. I think these things, I don't really blame the Leeds fans too much. I think these things kind of catch fire on its own. You'll have a couple of people booing who didn't know what it was for. And then it feels more difficult to stop booing, if that makes sense, once you read the message. And if 2, 3 people boo, then 10 people boo, and then it's 20. And, and that's how these things catch on. So I wouldn't want to go down the road of Leeds and the history. I think that would be unfair in this particular instance. I think it's just it's the tribalism that exists in football. Referee stop the game. It's just a natural reaction, it would appear, for a lot of fans to start booing and all the rest of it. But again, generally, I would say, just to finish off, I think understanding is good. I think the first time it was done, I think Abdullah Decore was playing for, I think, Everton at the time, or I don't know if he played for Palace, but he was talking about how it's a real good feeling to know that the Premier League is accepting of this. And we have an ever increasing load of Muslim players. And the moment you make that, let's say you build even more barriers, that might stop elite level talent coming to the Premier League. I don't think it would, but you get the point. I think anytime you can welcome different cultures and religions into the league, I think the league's a better place for it. So for me, no issues. And honestly, not a huge issue with the Leeds fans either.
That's an interesting take. It's certainly amongst the Leeds fans, it's caused a great deal of consternation. Because
Okay.
a lot of Leeds fans, I mean, my take is that you've got to put it into context what the backdrop is. There's a great deal of Islamophobia. There is obviously a concerted effort to sort of demonize Islam across the whole world. So that unfortunately, it's against that backdrop as well. Plus the fact that we didn't have any Muslim players, which obviously was going to compound the issue that the break was only going to be from Man City. I mean, there are some. I mean, when I was going through
Yeah.
Twitter, there are some who were sort of saying that the reason why some were booing was that Pep took the opportunity to have a team talk. Which really I would sort of turn around and sort of say, well, Falk should have done the same. So I don't know what the issue is, but I mean, I'm of the opinion that I tend to be you've got to be conscious of the world that you're living in, and sometimes maybe if I was a player for Man City, I'd say no. I think this is perhaps not the right time because obviously players have not done it. I mean, I've always been critical of so many Muslim players. I mean, Muslim players have graced the Premier League for so many years. But I think they've done an awful job in terms of projecting that they're Muslim. There is and trying to almost like sort of counter the narrative which is demonizing Islam and just sort of painting Islam in such a poor light. I mean, I've always been critical of Salah. I think Salah has done a horrific job. I think he's had a platform which he's just never used, and it can be used. It's like Gary Lineker. I mean, he puts his head above the parapet. Sort of Gary Neville as well. So there are obviously individuals within the sporting world where they're prepared to put the head above the parapet. Sometimes, perhaps, they'll sort of pick and choose where when they put the head above the parapet. But so I wouldn't have done that if I was a Man City player and I was playing. I would have said no, it's all right. Just what I'll do is I'll just grab a date or something sort of during the game rather than create an opportunity for the Brexit Party and for Reform and Restore, which I think will do quite
Yeah.
well at Ellen Road.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, the way I see it, and I guess we are slightly disagreeing with how we see this, is I'm okay with Man City asking because I also see it as a bit of an opportunity to kind of educate. I mean, you can imagine a father and a son attending the game, and a son who's kind of innocent, doesn't know right from wrong yet, and it's a bit of a teaching opportunity. Okay, Dad, why is the game stopping? And and I think that's the only way you can get this kind of commonality, this kind of mutual understanding of different cultures through education, through information. Otherwise, you're just living in ignorance. I'm not sure if the entire Leeds faithful were simply booing because of the whole Ramadan situation. I don't know. I don't know what's in their hearts. And we know the history, but I don't think that's fair just to judge 37,000, however many it was. I think it was 37,000 at the ground. I just think again, they probably stopped booing because I remember how it happened. There was a foul in the game. The commentator here on beIN Sports already mentioned that there is going to be shortly a stop for breaking of the fast. So I was aware that it was coming. Then there was a foul. The City, I think, wanted to take a quick free kick. Referee blew multiple times to say, no, 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 no. We're going to be taking even Bernardo Silva and Rodri were like, what's going on? So that's players, that's focus and concentration. I just think then the fans, you can imagine, some start booing, so the rest start booing. I mean, I always go back to that specific incident. Was it Leeds against Villa? Or which one was it? When the goal was given and all the Leeds fans were like, when the Leeds Bielsa allowed for the opposition to go from kickoff to score the goal. And I remember there's that documentary of Leeds fans shouting all types of abuse. I'm talking like 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, which was quite difficult to see actually. I don't think it's fair. I think it's just a cacophony. If you do it, more do it, then they're like, well, we'll just keep doing it. So I think it's an educational moment. I think it's a teaching opportunity. And I'll finish off with this, Ayub. I think most instances like this, in my humble opinion, the majority are just normal. I say majority of football grounds may be different, but the majority are normal, polite, kind people who understand
I
differences
don't
and
know what
cultures.
football ground you've been to recently.
No, again, football grounds. Football grounds. I'm with you.
It's
Football
them
grounds.
Saudi leagues, isn't it? It's those Saudi
Yeah,
leagues.
yeah, yeah.
Al Hilal.
Football. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're very chilled over here, but no, no, no. But you get the point. I think there's an educational moment. That's what I would say. The only way to bridge the gap is through more information being shared, and more and more Muslim players will be playing in this league, Ayub, and the fasts will be in Feb, Jan, December, and November over the next decade or so. So there'll be more and more of these opportunities as the fasts get shorter and shorter. So yeah, I don't think it deserves an insane amount of negative headlines for me.
No, it's all right. You're in Abu Dhabi. It's a safer environment to be a
We've got bigger
Muslim.
problems. We've got
Yeah,
bigger
yeah,
problems right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But just like a sort of final word. I mean, I know we've sort
Yeah.
of like sort of almost like sort of murdered this topic, but the final word on the education piece. My concern is some of people on Twitter were sort of saying, see, sort of Muslims are taking over, which is why I was slightly conscious of the fact that because what their counter argument was, there's no other religion. Now, obviously, there's a deeper argument to that, but there's no other religion which obviously sort of says that, all right, we'll need to sort of break in the game because we're obviously fasting. But like we can perhaps revisit this type of topic on a later date. Right, on to Arsenal versus Chelsea. Man City have done their job. So obviously they're right at the heels of the Arsenal. You've got a really tricky fixture. I mean, Chelsea are a bit sort of hit and miss, but on their day they're a tidy outfit. So uh, are you nervous, or are you sort of pretty confident Arsenal will do the job?
There's always a level of nervousness when you're trying to achieve the biggest titles of you, and that's where Arsenal are right now. So I think there's no more nerves than there would have been last week or the week before the week before. Chelsea are a very damn good outfit, and I think they don't. It sounds weird, but I think Arsenal right now don't mind playing away to some extent, and Chelsea probably don't mind playing away from home right now as well. They look like a team that Chelsea are a very good team. They've just had a very the results that they've had this season, especially against some of the kind of lower teams, is one where they've not been able to distance themselves from them. They've got a goal up, and then they've left the other team hanging around. And you know this, so you now in this
Mm.
league, if you keep teams hanging around, as Arsenal have found out in recent times as well, you're always susceptible to a moment of brilliance, a moment of panic, a mistake, and all the rest of it. So I think that's where Chelsea will want to improve going into next season. But they're a damn good outfit. I think that's very clear. They've got some world-class footballers, World Cup winners, and top players. I mean, Caicedo, Fernandez, Palmer, just to name a few. James, these are top footballers. Let's not get it twisted. So I think it'll be an incredibly tight game. In the first game in the League Cup, or in the Premier League, I was actually in Oman at the time, if you remember, and Arsenal should have won that game. Once I see Caicedo gets sent off, you'd think Arsenal should have
Mm.
enough, and that might be a game that they look back on come end of the season. Chelsea take the lead, Arsenal obviously draw level, but then even after 1-1 with about 25 minutes to go, Arsenal did not necessarily pour it on against 10 men, which was incredibly disappointing. And much to Chelsea's credit, to be fair, I think they deserve huge credit. Then you got the first leg of the League Cup semi-final. I thought Arsenal were well worthy, not just 3-2. I think they were well worthy for a wider margin of victory. Chelsea had a lot of players injured and missing for that game. Let's be very clear, but it should have been 4-1 or something like that. Apologies, that's my emergency alert going off again. See, I don't know if you heard it in the background.
In real time.
But in
Yeah.
real time, you get
Yeah.
alerts on your phone when there's stuff happening overhead. But in any event, so the first game and then the second game at the Emirates was a very tight affair. Havertz decided at the very last embers and delivered Arsenal a Carabao Cup final berth. I expect a very tight game. I expect Chelsea to be tight, compact, forcing Arsenal into having to force the issue a little bit, and then they'll think they can pick Arsenal off on the counter, especially when you have players like Palmer, João Pedro, who I thought, by the way, in that game at the Emirates gave Gabriel and Saliba all types of issues. So yeah, I expect a tight game, Ayub. Arsenal have very little margin for error. We discussed this offline actually last week, but I think Arsenal, I think right now, if you said, I don't know who the bookies' favourites are, but knowing that it's in Man City's hands and the way Man City are playing right now, I actually think City might just be marginal favourites, to be fair. Because they have the game at the Etihad against Arsenal as well. What Arsenal must do is go into obviously they'll have to win today, but that's the way it goes. If you want to win the Premier League titles, they'll have to win against Brighton. And I don't know what the chronology of fixtures is, but when they go into that game at the Etihad, they need to be in a position where drawing keeps it in their hands,
Mm.
and a win gives them one hand on the title. I think that's where they need to be in that position. I think Arsenal will have to win there regardless at the Etihad Stadium. I told you that offline. There's part of me that believes that they need that anyway for their psyche. I believe they're capable. I believe if there's a clear objective for them at the Etihad, it might help them in some ways, if that makes sense, as opposed to having to kind of fanny around, maybe thinking a draw might be enough and all the rest of it. I don't think that'll allow them to put their best foot forward. But going back to this game, I think it's a tough game. Chelsea home. I don't. I'm not saying I feel particularly confident about Brighton away, but Brighton will let you play it. Brighton will
Mm.
let you play. They'll have a game of football. Brighton will maybe score, but they'll concede. So you feel like, as though, look, we're going to get a chance to play against Brighton. So hopefully we can create enough opportunities to win the game. Although it's always a tricky place to go, Brighton, because again, they are so committed to playing football and they have a very unique style as well, much to their credit. But Chelsea is a tough outfit right now. I think on the basis that the margin for victory or the margins for Arsenal is so tight right now, they've got to win. It's not as though a draw is going to keep them in the box seat. They've got to win the game. So, yeah, difficult one, I think, from an Arsenal perspective. But if they can pick up a win and if they can then pick up a win in midweek against Brighton away, I think that still keeps them rolling, gives them confidence that they can see the job home. And again, it's my opinion, no matter what happens, that they need to go into that Etihad game knowing a victory puts them firmly in the box seat. So yeah, time will tell. How do you see the game this evening?
I mean, I'm looking forward to it in terms of a spectacle. And I've just got a feeling that this is going to be a real tough game for Arsenal because I think this is the part of the I mean, this is the part of the season where obviously it's the wobbles. It's I mean, City have done a terrific job. I mean, somehow they've stayed on the coattails of Arsenal. Arsenal have obviously had some sort of indifferent results, and this is not the sort of team that you want to be playing uh, when you're perhaps. I mean, I'm not sure exactly the mindset. Obviously, the last game was quite comprehensive. They beat Spurs. I mean, I thought that was going to be a potential banana skin, but Spurs obviously sort of they're just against Arsenal, perhaps they just didn't have what it takes. But Chelsea, I think, just might be. I'm going for a draw. I'm going for a draw. I think it will be a draw, and that will, I think, give City tremendous, even more confidence that it's in their hands. I think it's for Arsenal, it's almost like it's got to that stage where you've just got to keep on winning, because I've got a feeling that Man City will just keep on winning now.
Yeah,
I think the transfers that they've made of Semenyo and Guehi was superb. I think it's just given them something that I think was missing. I think they've stumbled and stuttered, and I think those two are just superb. I mean, and that's ideal. Sort of that's what you do sometimes. You shore up the back and you get an attacking force as well. So I mean, that's a perfect sort of window that they've had, and it's very rare that you can get such quality in January. So I think they've done themselves tremendous sort of favour by adding them. I think Arsenal sort of should be worried, and I think if it's a draw today, then I'll sort of be back in City. I think if they don't get a win today, Arsenal, I'll back City to win the league.
yeah, absolutely. I understand that, and I think they would be favourites. I think if Arsenal don't win today, I think all bookies will make City favourites. I think it's just that you hope as a neutral, and I'm not a neutral, I guess you somewhat are, but you'd be hoping that that game at the Etihad has all the big billing, in terms of not a winner takes all, so to speak, but you can. We spoke about it before. I think about my lifetime. I think back to that Monday night game, City against United, when City were going for the first title under Man City. Vincent Kompany scores the header. I can't remember a game that was billed, at least just subjectively speaking. I'm sure there were. I'm just talking about how it left an imprint on me because I still remember it was a Monday night. So it was a huge game. I just remember feeling incredibly nervous. And I wasn't even part of, in a sense, support for any camps, but it just felt like a huge game. I think that was the season actually when United were, I think, 8 points clear with 6 games left to go, and they managed to lose the title. But to City on the final day in those crazy moments, home to QPR. But look, I think it's slowly being. I think a draw wouldn't be the. I'm not saying the worst result for Arsenal, but to some extent, obviously that means if City win their game in hand, depending on how they win their game in hand, they go level on points. I think Arsenal, regardless, will have to avoid defeat today. A win's obviously optimal, but they have to avoid defeat. A defeat could be catastrophic, and that's the margins you're playing with. And against Chelsea, you can lose a game of football. They'll have to beat Brighton, and again, I think when you look at it, City, the only games I think City will maybe drop points in is Chelsea, Arsenal, and Villa. And Villa's last day of the week, last day of the season, by the way. And the reason I say that is because they've got a history with Villa on the last game of the season where they were in trouble before they obviously miraculously turned it around with Gundogan, Rodri, and Gundogan at the death. But I think there could still be something happening because Villa are an unusual outfit. They can play away from home. They can do something. So I just think that game at the Etihad, could well become the one where you say, like, and Arsenal need to be in a position where, again, if they win that game, even if it doesn't put them firmly in the box seat, the psyche, the confidence should be absolutely skyrocket. If you can win at the Etihad in the last 4 or 5 games of the season when you're both going for the title, it's not you should be able to win every other game, to be fair, from that moment on, just because of the confidence and all of that. So I think big win today needed for Arsenal Football Club. They've got the superior goal difference. That's one thing that came out of yesterday. That was only a slender win, and I think those things
Mm.
are important in the grand
Yeah,
scheme of
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Arsenal do have the superior goal difference after their +3 goal difference against Spurs last weekend. That's why even Gyökeres scoring in the dying embers. You just never know how
Mm.
that might impact things. And this is what I mean. Imagine a scenario you very quickly where Arsenal draw today, City win their game in hand. I think they might play their game in hand after the Arsenal City game. I need to double check the chronology. But then Arsenal would go into the game at the Etihad if they beat Brighton and the other games, where it might be same points, but Arsenal with a superior goal difference, which means a draw would keep them top. And this is what I
Mm.
meant about the approach.
Yeah.
If you remember a few podcasts ago, that it doesn't necessarily define the title at the end. There might still be 1 or 2 points at the end, but it defines the approach that you take going into certain games. So it'll be very interesting to see. I think, look, ultimately, Arsenal, when you look at it, Ayub, and for City as well, Champions League draw was made. Arsenal got a relatively kind draw, and that's me being very open and honest. That doesn't mean they can't lose, because you can lose any game of football. That's not me being arrogant. But objectively speaking, they got a draw in which they will be the favourites to at least get to the semi-finals. So when those games are played, i.e. last 16 home and away, quarterfinals, if they get through home and away, they will be the bookies' favourites to get through. That's just an objective standard. Now, if they get to the semis, most likely it's probably going to be maybe Barca, maybe Atletico. If it's Atletico, they've beaten them before in the groups. And Barca, I guess at that point, you're going to play a tough team, aren't you? So, look, it's got the hallmarks of what could be a wonderful season. They've got to navigate the fixtures that are coming, because you know how it is. You Feb, March, April, games come thick and fast.
Mm.
If you're in all the competitions, I saw Pep complaining a little bit about the fixture list, but it's par for the course. If you're playing for City, you're going to be playing a lot of games per season. But similar, City will have some challenges, won't they? Where you've got games sandwiched between Real Madrid, and if you get through, most likely then between Bayern Munich, in amongst all those Champions League, Premier League games. I think they've got to go to Stamford Bridge, Ayub, and that's what I think Arsenal have, in a sense, the carrot, because the carrot they will have is City won a wonderful game at Anfield, Ayub, where for me that was a huge, huge shift in terms of at least how I viewed it. That,
Mm.
yeah, they're going to take some stopping. That was a big one, especially when you're 1-0 down with 82, 83, 84 minutes gone. But also, we look at today thinking, can we beat Chelsea at home? Can we beat Brighton, knowing that City have to go to Stamford Bridge? Now, do I think City can win? Of course they can. But do I also see that a situation where Chelsea force a draw, or Chelsea force a win? Yeah, I can, because Chelsea have got quality footballers. So I think that's the psyche that Arsenal will have. Win today, try and get a win, knowing that City have that tricky game against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. One of the few games I see them potentially dropping points in. I think the others, respectfully, look pretty straightforward. I don't see this City in the final embers of a season dropping points in the games that I've seen. I'm talking about teams that don't have as much to fight for, defensively super vulnerable. Like, I don't see how a City could come a cropper in those games. So yeah, listen, I think going into the final games, it's there, isn't it, for a neutral Europe? It's shaping up
Mm.
that game at the Etihad will at least have absolutely monstrous billing, as it should. And who knows, the winner of that game most likely will go on to potentially lift the Premier League title.
Excellent. Right. And on that note, I think I'll go back to bed after we've after I've said my goodbyes, because it's still midday. It's what time do you break your fast? How many hours have you got? Because I've still got
We've got what
five and a half hours.
yeah, it's 3:49, so 4:49, 5:40. We've got about 2.5 hours
Well,
remaining,
I've
I
got
would
about
say.
5 hours, so I'm going to go back to Bedfordshire. As always, a pleasure, and it's good to see you. You can go to your bunker now, because obviously you've got that 4 minute warning. So you do that. You stay safe, and look forward to speaking to you very soon. All right. And as always, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Ta-ra for now.